Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Happy New Year, friends. This is your host, Steve Fielder. This is the Gone to the Dogs podcast. We have made it one more trip around the sun, and if nothing changes, we're all set for another year of podcasts. We did 52 last year. I think there was 14 that were done in the previous year. So we're, as long as this old gravelly voice will hold out, I guess we'll be coming at you every Monday here on the DU Hunting Supply Network. It's called Houndcast DU Supply. You can reach those folks if you need anything in the way of hunting gear, apparel, electronics, and service for the items that you have. It's dusupply.com. Today is the day after Grand American Week, the day that this podcast is airing. And, of course, we're cheating a little bit. We have to record these things before the fact. So I'm here today with a longtime friend, and I call him Mr. Grand American because he does just about everything that you can think of with that big event, and I'm sure he'll be the first to tell you he has lots of help. But just really glad to have in the guest chair today my longtime friend David McKee. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing good, Bubba. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. I think you and Lee Kearns and Lenny Kearns are probably about the only ones that call me Bubba. But I think that started, would that start back with my writing, or was that back in the AKC days?
I think when you used to do the Bubba stories is how you probably got that nickname. But Bubba back home,
yeah,
some folks might remember that.
yeah, that was fun. In my columns or articles that I did, I always tried to give a little news from back home in the hills from old Bubba, and had a lot of followers for that. A lot of people really enjoyed that, and I get from time to time people ask me to bring more Bubba into the picture. Oh, David, I tell you, I've caught you here on the beginning of the week of Grand American Week. And, of course, we won't be able to talk about the results and how well the event went this year because this is not going to air until the Monday after. But I know that you've been incredibly busy, as you always are. And, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. My first experience with the Grand American goes all the way back to 1966, and I think that was the second year. Was 1965 the first year?
I believe, 65 was the first year.
Okay, and I've told this story, I believe, before. If I haven't told it, I've written about it. My first experience with the Grand American was on a Greyhound bus headed back to college in Lakeland, Florida, from my hometown of West Virginia. And as we rolled through town on highway, I believe it was 301, maybe 601, I remember seeing a multitude of pickup trucks and dog boxes and lined up. And I think as we rolled through there that evening, I don't remember if it was Friday or Saturday, but the trucks were all lining up, the convoys and all that, going to the woods. And I'll never forget the impression that made on me. But it was a while before, I guess probably after college and all, that I started coming down and hunting myself. What can you remember as your first experience with the Grand American? Can you remember?
1976 was my first year there. 16 years old. Went down and actually I didn't hunt that night, but a friend of mine was hunting in it, and I went with him.
Yeah, I see. Well, that's I think probably the first time I went, I imagine I entered a dog and hunted. and I probably drew hellhole or some interesting place like that.
Yeah.
Where was? Oh man, I'm having trouble already with the name. Melvin
Melvin Brown.
Brown. Which club was he with?
He was with the Palmetto Club in Sumter.
Sumter. That's right. That's the one I remember guys showing up to get my guide at the club, and there was a little discussion going on in front of the desk because a boy had come there and wanted to enter the Grand American right there at the Sumter Club that day and go hunting that night. And they were trying to explain to him it doesn't quite work that way, that
Yeah.
you got to have an advance entry. But that was one of my first, and I hunted with a longtime friend. Now I hadn't met him before that, Travis Wyndham from South Carolina on that hunt. So yeah. Well, now David, you they say heavy hangs the head that wears the crown. Well, you're the guy that's kind of responsible on the hunt and most all facets of the Grand American. Are you still president of that association?
Yes, sir.
I see.
Yep.
Just off the top of your head, what are some of your duties with that, David?
Well, all the entries come to me. Deb and I take care of processing all of them, sending all of the confirmation cards and everything back out. And 3 years ago, we went to doing a pre-draw. So now we do all that as well. Some of the other ones come in and help us, do the draw and stuff. But it's a lot of work up front, but it makes it easier for everyone once we get there. So we're still learning on that process there, but everybody seems to enjoy it because from the office side, it makes it a lot better once we get there.
I got you. Well, if you hear a little background noise at times here, you're still very much involved in the week before the Grand American as we're talking here, and I'm sure the calls are coming in and so forth.
I've gotten 2 calls already while we've been here.
I'm sure. So we'll try not to keep you too long. But, and the Grand American to me, as far as the UKC events, would be in the big three. I think, if you slide the World Hunt in there too. But let's say the World Hunt aside, you've got the Grand American, the Winter Classic, and Autumn Oaks. All three are big events. A Grand American, of course, I would say that probably has a longer history than any of those others except Autumn Oaks. It started in 1960, so it has about maybe 5 years on the Grand American in terms of longevity. But everybody looks at the Grand American as the hunt to kick off the new year.
Right.
And well, I wonder I knew some of the guys, the older guys that started the Grand American. Do you remember any of those fellas? Of course, it started before your time, I know.
Yes.
But were you able to meet and talk with any of the fellas that were there from the beginning?
Yes, some of the original members were actually Tater Steele was probably the only one that was still involved with the Grand American. Whenever I became involved with it, he was the treasurer of the Grand American at that time. So him, Charles Ivy, Melvin, a lot of those guys were still around, but were not involved. But Tater was still involved.
Well, I always and I hesitate to mention some of these guys at times because I don't know what a year has really entailed. But I always enjoy talking to Harris Varner at the Grand American. a gentleman that's been there for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I guess through my association with the Plot Dogs in the National Plot Association, I knew some of the founders, Ralph Hendricks from Greenville, for
Right.
instance, and Mr. Wilson. Oh man, I'm getting bad with names, David.
I'm trying to think.
I'm getting old. I wanted to say Warren Wilson, but he's out in Missouri. But I'll think of it in just a minute. But Troy Godwin was another one. I think maybe Jim Mathis in the early days was involved, and then of course you don't go to the Grand American without visiting with Harry Ott. And Harry's been around for a long time too, hasn't he?
Yes, sir. I think we were talking the other day, and actually one of the ladies had put something on Facebook about doing some interviews with people who had been there, coming for a long time and stuff. And Harry's probably the only one that has been in every one that is still around.
That's quite an achievement when you go all the way back to 1965.
Yeah.
And I remember Harry. He has been such a good friend to me down through the years. Everybody that's listening to this that knows that I kind of moved around from registry to registry. And one time I was with one or the other of the registries that was not the one that was licensing the Grand American that year. And I said, Harry, I appreciate you giving me a booth space here, or not, he didn't give it to me, but providing a booth space for me here in the vendor barn. And he said something that that meant a lot to me personally, and just to show the kind of guy Harry is. He said, in that quick talking way of his, he said, Steve, as long as there's a Grand American, there'll be a place for you here. And man, I can't even say that without kind of tearing up a little bit, because relationships like that are not taken mildly or lightly. You know, and so I've always enjoyed the Grand American, always had a great time there. I'm sure you and I can reminisce about a lot of people that we always saw there every year and then aren't there anymore, And
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, just down real briefly, I can recall Paul Sheffield always being set up in the corner there in the vendor barn. And Mr. Paul and his wife and his daughters and all there. Remember him very, very well, Remember Kenny St. John always being set up out there in a tent, like with his crystal lights and stuff like that. Kenny has passed on. And I'm sure there's just an awful lot. What was Robert Whiteford? Yeah, Whiteford.
Robert Whiteford, yeah.
Yeah, he was Ronnie Mace's buddy. And, I always used to see him there. And just various ones. And I know time marches on, but that's, if nothing else, to go to the Grand American just to see old friends. You're going to have a great time, Well, how's it looking? Yeah, go ahead.
I said that. I think that's one of the biggest things is a lot of people get to see each other that haven't seen each other for quite a while. It is like a big reunion. My dad was laughing the other day. She was reading something, and she said, "These people don't care. They don't care about the hunt. They just care about getting to come be with each other and everything." And I said, "That's a huge part of it."
It is. It really is, and that's what I tell a young fellow be joining me this year, or would have joined me. It's kind of confusing here that we're on the air after the event. That went to Autumn Oaks for the first time this year, and he asked me back then. He said, "Which should I go to?" And a Grand American or Autumn Oaks? And I said, "Well, both. You need to go to both." Of course, the Autumn Oaks was coming right up, so he went there and had a great time, and now he's going to be at the Grand American too. So I'm looking forward to his reaction,
Yeah.
and see all the people that he gets to meet, and hopefully I'll be able to introduce him to. Well, Grand American, tell the listeners a little bit how the hunt works,
Okay.
just the structure.
All right. It's a 2-night event, and this year we changed this a little bit. We had some pretty strong discussions, and one thing a lot of people don't realize is the Grand American is made up of clubs throughout the state that put it on. So we meet 3 times a year, and this year we had, or last year, I'm sorry, I got to remember we're in January, but last year we had one of the clubs give a proposal to change the entry fee and give the money back to the top 20. We had been doing $35 and taking $5 off of each entry and dividing it between the top 20 each night. The proposal was to go to $50 and to take $20 and do that. So we're doing that this year. So just based on the pre-entries, without the walk-ons, right now the top 20, each one of them is going to get $169 cash, in addition to their trophy and other awards and stuff. So that's a change. And we were kind of hesitant about going to $50, but we haven't had anybody complain or anything about it, and hopefully that's going to make a significant difference in the number of hunts. If not for next year, when people realize where that money is going, we'll do a good job promoting that. But anyway, we take our double cast winners, and then we take the top 4 out of the double cast winners, and they get to go back out Sunday morning at 3:30 in the morning and hunt for an hour to hunt it off. And somewhere around daylight, usually Sunday morning, we're crowning our Grand American champion. The show, Danielle Champ took over the show about 3 years ago, which has been a tremendous amount of help for me, and she's done a great job with it.
She's got a lot of energy. Really a great person.
I love her to death. Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
Her and Gary both just worked their tails off up there, and the show last year went over 300 dogs, which was tremendous. And I'm looking forward to be that way this year as well. And we'll, we're always working to try to make things better. But I think the entry there, going up to $50 and giving that money back to the hunters is significant. And I hope everyone realizes that, that's a pretty good bonus,
Well, David, in light of, back in the day, way back when entries were $5-10 or whatever, that might have been a significant jump that would have been, may have caused a lot of people to kind of feedback there.
Right.
But today, when you see the phenomenal entry fees that are being charged at hunts, of course, some of them are paying back a phenomenal amount of money too, but most of the guys are saying, man, I can't even enter. When you're talking 4 figures and up for an entry fee, $50 is and you're paying it back to the hunters too, so I think it's a good move. I applaud you. I didn't choke a bit when I sent that check. Of course, I hope it's good. If it bounces, I'll send you another. But but anyway, we got a little dog in the hunt this year, and I'd be tickled to death to have to be out there early Sunday morning. Standing on the road rooting for my dog while my buddy is out there in the swamp. But we're not naive enough to think we're going to take a 14-month-old pup and win the Grand American. But we're going to go and have a good time anyway. You
don't never know.
Yeah, you can't win if you don't play, can
That's
you?
right. That's right.
Right. Well, besides the Grand American, and of course, I know before we leave that altogether, how many hours sleep would you estimate you get in the weekend between Thursday and Sunday?
Oh, about 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because you don't live right there around Orangeburg. You have a bit of a drive down there, don't you?
Yeah, I'm 110 miles from the fairgrounds, so we'll leave out Thursday morning. I'll leave here around 5:36, and all of us that are working on Thursday, we meet and eat breakfast together at 8:00, and then once we eat, we go out to the fairgrounds, get everything, make sure any last minute details. At 9:50, we all meet at the main gate. We have a prayer. And
Attaboy.
10 o'clock, we open the gate and get started. That's been a tradition ever since I've been president. We've done that.
Well, I certainly applaud you for that, because with all the people that you're going to entertain through those gates, actually beginning on Thursday, you have the what do you call that? Coon Fest or something?
Yeah, we have
that?
Coon Fest, and all the vendors set up, and we actually open the dogs on the grounds as well. So they'll be coming in. A lot of them come in on Thursday morning as well. So when we get there, they'll be lined up at the main gate waiting to come in.
Well, I miss most of that because I usually roll in late Thursday afternoon and stop at the gate and talk to my old buddy Dale. He's usually sitting out there.
Yep.
And I'll be in the vendor barn in our usual place with American Cooner Full Cry magazine there inside the big white vendor barn. And I will plug a little bit. I will have books with me and a few logo hats and all. But I'll mostly be there with Terry Walker, who is one of your major sponsors of the
correct.
Grand American Day.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yeah, C&H Publishing. But anyway, so before we leave Grand American altogether, can you remember a particular incident or something that was really unusual, or something that happened over the years, or something that just comes to mind, a story or something?
I think there's been so many things happen that trying to come up with one, but I can remember, probably in the 90s when I was actually doing the Master of Hounds. And the little office there in the corner used to have a set of double doors on it, where it's one door now. But you mentioned Harris Barner a while ago. Harris was I guess you would call him our sergeant at arms or whatever, but he always stood at those doors anytime we had a question or anything like that. And we were in the middle of a question, and somebody came and just pushed both of the doors and hit Harrison in the back and knocked him forward. And if you don't know Harris, I mean, you don't. He's about 6'8".
He's not a little guy.
No. And he comes floundering across through there, and then he turned around and proceeded to get the guy's attention who had opened the door, to put it mildly, But I still pick at him about that. He
It's like a Western, somebody coming
yeah,
pushing through those batwing
yeah,
doors on the saloon, right?
yeah,
No, I don't think I'd pick out Harris if I was going to pick somebody
no.
to shove around. Oh, that's
Oh,
crazy things that happen at the coon hunt, isn't
and
it?
then
Yeah.
the hill out there.
Oh, yeah.
They took it down 2 years ago, and we were, I don't know how many of us were talking, but the memories that our families had on that hill. I mean, my wife, even she slid down that hill on cardboard. My kids, my grandkids, uh, uh, some.
Oh, yeah, that was a feature,
Oh yeah,
right there. I guess it was the backside of the track,
it was. It was
wasn't it?
where
Yeah,
they had
when
built
they
it up
pushed,
for
yeah,
the
earth
actually
bleachers
where
on
the
the other side,
students
right?
were.
Yeah, yeah. And the kids would find pieces of cardboard to get them from the vendors, I
Yep,
guess.
yep.
And they get out there and slide down. It's a grassy hill, or it
Hmm.
was.
It
And
was.
they'd slide down that hill. And it was fun. I took a lot of photos and videos over the years of the kids sliding down that hill. That
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah, it was like a theme park, man.
Yep, yep. I mean,
Yeah, it's
that was
cool.
just some of the good memories, and then gosh, we've made so many improvements over the years. Uh, when I first memories of going was everybody drove through and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Just vehicles through there all the time, and uh, all of that's gone now. We don't
Yeah,
allow any of that, but um, those are just things that you look back and
sure.
you. I remember coming in. Well, I was probably 18 or 19 years old, but driving in, and this lady in front of me, for some reason, she just decides to back up and backs right into the front of my truck. My bumper just caves in her trunk lid, and she's all upset. Her husband's going to be upset, and I'm thinking, good gosh, what are we going to do, And then finally, someone comes over and says, "Look, just pull over to the side, and you know, if she's at fault, so you ain't got to worry about anything." But those things, kind of things you remember over the years there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um, I can remember
Well,
being in the office, and it raining so hard that the whole office leaked and water running down the walls, and us having to move paperwork and stuff around, trying to keep it
mm,
from getting wet, and the little old heater in the corner trying to keep us warm. So,
over the
those
years,
were,
there's been a few times it's been cold at the Grand American. Now, I looked at the weather
yeah,
report, and it looks like, the weather's good for this
yeah,
year.
yes.
Yeah,
From what we've had
but
for the last 4 or 5 years, this weekend, it's looking like it's going to be real, real good.
yeah. Well, that's awesome, and the main thing is that everybody has a good time, and that's I know that's where your heart is, David,
Yes, sir.
and you say just a word about the staff there. You have a huge staff,
Right.
and tell us about that a little bit. You don't have to name all the names,
Well,
but
I wouldn't want to, because I'd be remiss if I left someone out. But yeah, it takes about 30 of us working there to put it on, and they start, like I said, on Thursday morning, and they work throughout until Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. Everyone
yeah,
is there from when the gates open. Everyone's expected to be there, and,
all
and
right,
they are, and they
all right.
all have a particular job that they take care of, and then we kind of have some of us officers and board members are assigned to certain groups and stuff to help take care of
Mm-hmm,
everything. But I
mm-hmm,
mean, even just the parking, when you look at, we're going to park somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 vehicles for that weekend. That's a lot of people that come
yep,
through there. and out there on the dog grounds. We have anywhere from 100 to 150 people out there selling dogs, and then we have the ones who want to try to sell some used items and stuff, which is okay. It's great for us. We call it Harry's Flea Market, out there, and we try to take care of those. And as long as there's no ones out there selling new items, we don't allow that because it's not fair to our vendors. For a vendor to pay $200 and have to get a license, and someone pull up there and pay $30 and want to sell some. Those are the type of things that we deal with every weekend, and
Sure.
and we'll have. You mentioned automotives a while ago. One thing, there it's a lot bigger fairgrounds. It's laid out different, and they allow the golf carts. Well, every year we have people who want to bring the golf carts, but unfortunately, our fairground is not laid out as big. It's a lot smaller, more compact, if you will. So we just can't accommodate them with that.
You'd have too many pedestrian
Yeah,
incidents. It's tough sometimes, especially like on Saturday, to even get around the grounds just with all the foot traffic because of all the people that are there.
Yeah, that's what people will tell me. They'll ask me, was it a big crowd? And I'm like, I can't answer that question because after we get through with opening ceremonies, I pretty much don't come out of the office until the casts are starting to the woods, so I don't get the opportunity to be out there. A lot of days I would like to.
Yeah. Well, that's over the years with me too. In the last few years, when I've been in the booth there with Terry Walker, and people come by and want a book or want to talk to me or whatever. So I'm pretty much tied to that one general area. I do try to get out every year and at least take a walk around the grounds, just to maybe peep in at the bench show and all. But I'd really like to be able just to spend time there, and walk around and go through all the vendor stuff and see all the things I don't need, but I'd want and all that. But talking about vendors, I saw the other day where you guys listed, or I guess the guy that's in charge of your vendors listed that there were more than 80 already signed up for this year.
Yeah,
is that right?
I think Ashley said she had 86, and then she sent me a text one night and saying that she had already got a few more. Said she.
So it's gonna. You can easily assume that there'll be 100
Yes,
or
sir.
more.
I think we'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 100.
Right.
Right. This is actually her first year taking care of the vendors. So she's doing a phenomenal job with it. Ashley is Ralph Crago's granddaughter.
I see.
Ralph was our VP for a lot of years, but she's been involved with coon hunting, her whole life since she was a little. Now she's got a boy. Her son is around 10, and he coon hunts. So, matter of fact, I got the first Monday in December. We actually went hunting together. So.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. That's a name that's been associated with Grand American for a long time, too, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to dwell too much on these events and all, but just real quickly, you also wear the hat of president of the South Carolina Coon Hunters Association, right?
Yes, sir. Been president since '95.
Yeah, that's quite a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I've often said, if you got a job to do, find a busy man, But, man, I've often wondered, how do you juggle all this stuff? And you're still involved with the American Kennel Club as as a
Yes, sir.
field rep or whatever.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
I am.
So, and then beyond that, what else you got going on? You're not the
Well,
mayor of Whitmire, South Carolina, are you?
no, no.
No,
Uh,
no.
the backside of politics is all I want. I don't need any of the front of it. I deal with
Well,
a lot of it on our end, but um,
yeah.
as
Well,
far as
you've
being a
done
politician, no.
right. Well, you've done a lot of legislative work on behalf of coon hunters and houndsmen of all kinds in the state of South Carolina, and I certainly commend you for that too. I know that you've got a presence in the state capitol. People know you in the game department, know that you represent the hound sports and all. How long have you been dealing with those kind of things, you think?
Probably since 1995,
Hmm.
when I got elected president, there was a House member who was actually a coon hunter, and Larry Coon was his name. And
Hmm.
Larry was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which is, if you know anything about politics, that's the most powerful committee there,
Right.
because they drive the
Provide the
budget.
money.
You're right. That's it. So Larry told me, he said, you need to get involved. You need to start getting making some relationships with some of the people in there and stuff, and with the DNR and stuff. So we did. He was my mentor for that, and worked with me, and now Larry Thompson and myself, Larry's our vice president. Um, we do have some very good working relationships with a lot of the House and Senate members, to the point that we have some of them uh, cell phone numbers, which they don't give those out uh, to most anybody, because, and I understand, and I don't share them. But same way with the director and colonel of the DNR. We have that relationship with them, and actually. Uh, they put on a dinner every year. The DNR does, for the legislators and stuff, and Laird and I are invited every year to that. So we always go, and you get a chance to sit down and talk with some of them face to face. So it always helps when you do call one of them, if they can remember who you are when you've met each other. So
Well, I
with
think it was Mike Thorman with the Michigan Hangdog Federation up there that I worked with for many years that said, it's important to know who your representative is, but it's more important that they know who you are.
That's
And,
exactly right.
so when you go into Columbia, you can be recognized and they know who you represent. And so having done that kind of work for many years, I know how rewarding it can be. I also know how frustrating it can be sometimes.
Yes.
But well, David, you certainly have done more than your share for the houndsmen of South Carolina and across the nation that come to Grand American, and also those that attend the big AKC events like the World Championship and things like that. They get to see you there and see the results of your efforts. So, man, that's great. I know all these things about you, but what I know that I like best is that you're a pretty good hunting buddy, and that you're a pretty good guy to go to the woods with and have a good time with. And we've had
Yeah.
a lot of those times, but we're not having them right now, and I'm overdue.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is the memories you make, and man, you and I have so many of them. I don't know how many miles we have traveled together, but
It's been a bunch.
it's been
It's
a
been
bunch.
yeah, yeah. Tell them that story about me going down through Thomasville, Georgia, back in the cell phone days.
Uh, oh, he was having trouble with his cell phone, so he's talking with AT&T or whoever it was,
Verizon, I think, maybe.
Verizon, I believe it was. But anyway, then he needed another cell phone to do something with, so he's got my cell phone, and he's on both cell phones. And the part that I left out up to this point is he was driving.
Do not try this at home,
No.
folks.
So I finally I just reached over and I grabbed the steering wheel. I'm like, you take care of it. I'll drive. So I'm driving like the mailman, when they used to reach over and hang on.
I'm not proud of that moment, but it is real. It is humorous as you look back. But yeah, my frustration. And as you know, David, I'm not the most patient guy in the world either.
Oh no.
So yeah, that's probably one of our deals where we were going to down to Johnny Brinkley and Laquita Brinkley.
We were going to Johnny, yeah.
Yeah. So
there wasn't much traffic on the road.
Yeah, thankfully we were down one of those old backcountry Georgia highways at the time. So yeah, we had a lot of good times. Those times that we spent, and we probably talked about this on a podcast sometime before. I don't know if we did or not, but those times that we spent around Johnny and Laquita's table on our hunts that we took down there for years were some of my favorite memories. I mean, we always went when we were, I was with UKC when we started the Winter Classic in Albany, Georgia. And then I went to work with PKC, and we had a hunt in Thomasville, Georgia. And I believe it was our mutual friend Lee Kearns that invited me to go with him down to Johnny's one night after we got the dogs out at Thomasville. Lee was helping me with the bench shows at that time. We started.
I was actually judging that show.
Right. That's right. I think that's the first time we really got acquainted, David.
It was. That was the first year we went down to Johnny Nim's.
Yeah. Man, did we have some fun times down there.
Yes.
H.L. Meyer would be down there at times, and Lee, and of course his boys, and all. But those mornings after the coon hunt, when we'd sit around the table and tell stories, and of course Laquita'd feed us way too much. And,
yes.
You cannot put a price tag on that kind of experience. You can rent a room in a 5-star hotel with the best golf course in the country and the finest chef and all of these kind of things and treat yourself to a weekend there. To me, it wouldn't even hold a candle to the fun that we had in those days.
Sitting on the tailgate with Jake and them eating oysters and I
meant to mention Jake Lewis and little Jake, his son, and Kenny that used to come up with him, and all those guys. Wow, Johnny and his son have some property there out not far from where Johnny lives, and in fact, Doug, his son, I think, built a house here within the last few years out there.
He did.
But this is all fenced-in property with dog-proof fence. So you can cut your dog in there and not worry about him getting on a highway or getting on somebody else's land. Now, occasionally that coon will get through that fence or maybe climb a tree and get away. But, man, Johnny had an old metal table sitting out there. And I think he told me that he rebuilt over 3,000 transmissions on that table when he had it in his shop. He ran a transmission shop there in Tallahassee, I think. But man, I got to get Johnny Brinkley on this podcast, and I'd like to have you back, David, when I do, because Johnny has got story after story. Look at here,
Yeah.
Steve, he's saying.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
just lean back, and here we go, because Johnny has some great, great story, and a sweeter guy, a better friend, a better disposition in a human being I've never met in my life.
Absolutely. Johnny's been going through some health issues for the past 5 years, and but always, anytime I talk to him, always the same upbeat,
Oh yeah,
always positive, talking
yeah,
about the things, and um, I do.
yeah.
I miss getting to go down there. I actually, about 3 years ago, we had an AKC event down in Georgia, and I left a day early and went by and spent the night with
Yeah.
Johnny and Laquita, and uh, man, we had a great time. I mean, didn't get to turn the dog loose because Johnny's not able, but
Right.
man, we had a great time just visiting.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about, for me, and always will be. I have people contact me. I got a letter the other day a message that kind of concerned me a little bit, and I tried to take it with hopefully the intent that it was written. It was written by a guy. He said he was 41 years old. And he listened to the podcast and he enjoyed it. And he read my book. He said he read it from beginning to end. And he enjoys the podcast. But he says when you talk about younger hunters, you talk in a demeaning way. You talk as if, it's not encouragement to younger hunters. And I told him, I said, man, definitely don't want to bring that message to these younger kids and younger people. But at the same time, I'm an old guy, okay? I'm 76 years old. My ways are the older ways. I learned from the time I was a kid about hounds growing up and all. And I feel that there's a lot of value there to share. And I also feel that sometimes, and I don't say all, but sometimes the younger hunter would rather confront instruction or suggestions than they would to try to absorb it and try to, get what's good out of it. It almost seems like sometimes there's an attitude, well, this guy's old, he doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm going to confront him about it, and that's fine as long as it's done respectfully. I am not going to take disrespect from anybody. I mean, my dad taught me that at a very early age. You don't have to like me, you don't have to agree with me, but you need to treat me in a respectful manner, and I'll do the same for you. But I do think about that, and I certainly don't want to bring that message to young people. But when I say younger hunters today seem to want to do it this way, there's always a but. I've been there before, or I know people that have been there before, and they say, or experience teaches me that I need to do it this way. And I just wish we could bridge that gap. And I'm going to try to watch that going forward, that when I speak about younger hunters or new hunters, this guy had said he had hunted for 3 years. But I don't want to give them the impression that I don't want to listen to them, and I don't want to take their suggestions and all, because I think that'd be a dead-end street. But at the same time, I'm not going to change my ways just for the sake of change. Do you feel that way, David, or am I way out
I
in left
do.
field?
I understand that it's a lot of it's different from when you and I came up, and even today, with me still being involved with the administrative side and stuff, you know, the mentality, I guess, has changed over the years. Not just in coon hunting, but in society in general. And some of the things that we look at, uh, the memory side and things like that. A lot of our younger hunters haven't got to that point yet. And I look back and I can remember when I was going to a competition hunt pretty much every weekend. I mean, I went to win. I didn't go to make friends. I made friends, uh, but that was not what I was there for. I was there to compete and to promote my dog and to win. And so I do understand that aspect of it is still there. And for us old farts like you and I, that's not there anymore. And sometimes when we do try to make the younger people see that there is another side to it, they're not ready to get there yet. So I kind of what I tell some of them at the club now, if you don't want my opinion, don't ask.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, as we get older, we have a lot of memories. We have a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
And, and the older you get, David, you'll understand what I'm saying here because I'm considerably older than you are, is that everything brings up a memory. It brings up an experience. That's where all these stories come from. And it's not to say, I know everything there is to know. And I
That's right.
want to, in this new year, this is true confessions are good for the soul, they say. I want to go on record as saying I am going to be careful what I say about younger and newer hunters so that any word that I pass along to them is a word of encouragement, not from a lofty place, but from a place of, I understand where you are, where your sport is, and how it's going. But if you got time to listen, I've got a suggestion that you might try that worked for me, and
Yeah.
maybe it'll work for you. That's the kind of attitude that I want to bring to these younger hunters. But I tell you what, you get that old. I just posted something on Facebook this week because my good friend Al Metcalf in Georgia had posted a picture of Devil Anse Hatfield sitting astride a black horse. And that's my family. My mother was a Hatfield. Her parents were from East Kentucky and all that, So I've got a little bit of that old fire in me, And if I think one of these young whippersnappers is going to challenge me, man, I'm up for it, I think.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. The mental aspect, we're still tough. But when it comes to the physical aspects, of course, we aren't. But anyway, I've whipped that horse enough. But that was just something that came up
Well,
recently.
just something. When you were saying, I was thinking that we were at a club meeting last month, or month before last, and the guys were talking about, they were giving each other a hard time about they were swapping a coon from one live trap to the other, and talking about trying to shake it and keeping it from getting bit and all these things. And I'm just sitting over there, and finally one of the guys says, "There's got to be an easier way to do it." And one of them said, "Mr. David, what's the easiest way to do it?" I said, "Put both of them, the opening to the opening, take a coat and throw the one you want it to go in, he'll go right in it." So they did, and it was like, that took, we've been fighting this thing for 30 minutes. Yeah. Just,
Yeah. But and that's the thing I'd like to see the younger hunters. And I've got one in my circle of friends, Keston Jesse. He's been here on my podcast a few times. He and I partner on a Walker puppy up there. He hunts every night he possibly can. And he asks all kinds of questions. From the very first time I met him, it was, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. And Keston has not been a guy who said, well, that doesn't sound like right to me. He never does. He never says,
Right.
I don't agree with that. I don't think that'll work. He asks his question. He listens to my opinion. Now, I don't know how much of it he's digesting, but he doesn't throw it back at me,
Right.
And I think
Right.
if we could convince the younger people, it's like going to the supermarket, go down the aisle. You don't have to take everything on the shelf, just pick out the items you want and
Yeah.
go pay the cashier. And that's the same thing, whether it's on the internet or whether I'm speaking on a podcast or somebody's writing an article in a magazine. Take it with a grain of salt. Consider the source and say, well, this guy's been at it for quite a long time. Maybe, just maybe, he can suggest something that'll help me,
And I hear that a lot of times. They'll be talking and they'll ask one of the I'd say middle-aged guys, if you will, how would you do this or whatever, and they'll tell them, and it's like, man, that's a great idea, and I'm thinking, that's correct because it's been around forever, but I, it's just like they don't realize that some of the ideas that they have are not really ideas. It's things that have been implanted in them at one point or another.
Exactly.
From someone older.
Yeah.
Look, John Wick's book. Look how relevant that book still is today.
Yeah.
How
Absolutely.
many of his training tips are out there? People are using they don't even realize where they come from.
Right. That's exactly true. And I thought in my response to this writer, I said, I'm old and my ways are old, but, coon hunting is a very old sport. It's a very old sport.
Absolutely.
And it really hasn't changed that much. The style of dogs that we have, the night hunts, I'd say, have changed considerably due to the style of dog that we're hunting now, with that what we call these deep and lonely ambush type dogs, where you and I came up in the era of where dogs pack tighter. Handling a dog in a night hunt was a lot more intense because there was competition there between the handlers. Now, not so much. You don't have to be competing with that other dog for that first tree as much. And so, but coon hunting again is very old. The old tried and true methods that Lester Nance used and James Merchant used and Joe House used and all these guys down through the years will still work today. And and there has been some innovations that have come along. Electronics has probably changed our sport more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Points well taken, David, for sure. Well, I tell you what, man, we've been at it almost an hour here, and I promised you that's about what I'd take away from your busy schedule this week. But let's talk just a little bit before we go about some of the dogs that you've had down through the years that you liked. I know I mentioned to you earlier that I really liked that female out of Nighttime Savage that you had named Ann. And what have been some of your favorites down through the years?
Ann was definitely ranks up there as one of the best hounds I've owned, and I never really competition hunted Ann a lot because I was at that point, and um, that it wasn't a priority with me anymore. And I've had a real good male dog off of Lee Kearns' boomer dog named Ace that did real well with. Branded him out on the bench and on in the hunts as well. He was just a real smart dog, which was most of of the dogs out of that bloodline were. Only time I ever put a leash on him was on a competition hunt. I mean, he was just that type of dog.
Yeah.
Had a female, in the 80s. That was a River Bend flag dog. That was very, very good hound. She was actually my son picked her out as a pup, and he asked him it was his dog. But anyway, she was one of those, probably one of the first ones I had that was more independent than others, and she didn't mind being with other dogs, but she didn't mind being by herself either. She, you know, and you made a good point there. When you were competing, the dogs were packed, and really you had to know your dog better than you do now, because now they're pretty much off by themselves uh, more than they are together. So it's a lot easier to pick your dog's voice out when it's alone than it is when there's three others in there opening with it. So, but she was one of those that she would get off by herself and tree a coon, and you hunted with Ann a lot of times, and she was just a male dog in a female's body. I mean, I've never had a dog with a mouth like hers, as loud as she was, and even
Incredible.
yes, I mean, even as a pup, she had no desire to be with anything else. She didn't care what they were doing. She was going to do her own thing, whether it was in the swamps or in the mountains, wherever. She was just her own dog, and um,
And we put her in the swamps at Johnny's a few
yeah,
times.
yeah.
Them cypress ponds, as Johnny called them.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she looked like a black and tan when she come out of there. So much mud and stuff on them.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's funny.
she was probably one of my favorites. And then I had an old dog named Head that I won the
I,
state with. It was he was just a big old ball mouth dog. That he was a house bred dog that I really enjoyed. Um, those are just a few that come to mind right off.
well, I know
Enjoyed.
each of us have dogs down through the years that we look at as being favorites and all. You had a nice young dog out of Cutter
I
there.
did. I did.
Yeah,
And he got run.
Crow and Grant's Cutter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got her run. She got run over. She was making a real good hand.
Right.
She was off of Cutter and Ann,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't have a
Well,
mama's mouth, but she was making a real good dog.
Well, and talking to my buddy Mark Miller, who's been on this podcast before, and he and I partner in the pot dog. He had his dog Crockett is pretty close bred on Nighttime Savage, who was Ann's sire,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. David, something humorous came to mind. And then I'm going to let you go. A while ago, the rooster was crowing there at your house, right? Did you hear that? Or is something
I don't
you
pay
don't?
any
Okay,
attention anymore, but
right. Well, I remember one time we were on a staff conference call when I was with AKC, and of course you were on staff there with me and Lindell Price and Jimmy Phillips and Jerry Mall, and I think Caroline was there. Murphy was there on the call too. And all of a sudden we hear this jackass braying in the background. Do you remember that?
I was sitting on the front porch. Yeah.
I said, well, that pretty well sums up what this discussion's all about, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, that was funny. But you do live outside the small town of Whitmire there,
Yeah.
South Carolina, right? On property, I believe it's been in your family for a while.
Third generation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, David, I know that you got a busy weekend, and I kind of cheated because I knew if I wanted to talk to you, I wasn't going to get a chance in Orangeburg, but maybe a minute or two. I do recall the days when your club also ran the club, the kitchen out there on the grounds. Man, that food was good, and I'll miss that.
Yeah.
But you did that for many years, didn't you?
We did. Deb was laughing about it the other day. She was saying that, she said, if I had a reason to come to Orangeburg, I would come. She said, but, I'm not coming just to sit in a hotel room. She said, back when we did the kitchen, I had a reason to be there. And she was like, now, she said, I'm not going down there just to sit in a hotel room and not do anything because you stay so busy.
Right.
So, well, we were talking to the grandkids about when we used to do that and how many people it took to run the kitchen and everything and the great times that we had.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I hope to get together with one of your proteges at the Grand American and have some recording to share with my listeners, and that's Daniel Felker and his partners, Ryan James and Dustin Faulkner, and they did. I call them the UFO boys, or the Sasquatch boys, but they have the Coon Hunting Confidentials podcast, and looking forward to that. But David, we'll talk more at the Grand American. Not to confuse our listeners, that just happened last weekend, but for our recording purposes, it's coming up in a few days. But certainly wish you all the best, buddy. Look forward to seeing you. Is there anything that we should have said that we didn't say?
I can't think of anything, Bubba. Just looking forward to another good time.
Yeah, well, we'll sure do that for sure. Folks, that's David McKee, president of the Grand American Association, the South Carolina Coon Hunters Association, also a field representative for American Kennel Club. Been a great guest here today on the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Folks, if anybody asks you where Steve Fielder is, where's he hanging out these days? Just tell him he's gone to the dogs.